senior representative for real estate, Peter Dennison, called me and my wife and told us that they would offer us $5,815,000 for our entire property. I had been clear through the years that we did not want to convey the property in the middle of the property because my father was buried on that property. So they said, we'll give you $2 million more if we can have the whole thing. I talked this over with my wife and my son, who was videotaping this for a while, and we decided that for $2 million more, we could buy some other property, maybe in the Mono Basin, so that my entire family could then appreciate that. It was clear that we had wanted to keep a portion of our property so that my son, my nieces and nephews, and grandchildren and future generations could enjoy this property that's been in our family since 1919. In January 7th, 2005, Peter Dennison, on behalf of Rusty Gregory, offered $5,815,000. He knew that there were other people in the private sector at that time who were going to buy our property and develop it. After Jeff Bailey had threatened me, we went with Paul Oster to, my wife and I drove over here from Santa Cruz, met Paul Oster. We went to the offices of the Mono Lake Committee and gave them a transcript of what Jeff Bailey, the supervisor of the Indian Forest, left on my answering machine, and told them that I had been threatened by Rusty Gregory. And we said, we've been waiting for 4 years to get a valuation on our property that conformed to the Forest Service guidelines, and we can't do that anymore. But we knew, we had a pretty good idea if you read Tom Barnetti's letter, what Mono County would reasonably expected to approve. And so did a lot of other people. So there were people out there in the private sector who were going to offer us money, and Rusty knew that. So that they came in with a $5,815,000 offer, and he knew there were other people in the private sector at that time who were going to buy our property and develop it. He also knew that we were willing to sell the property for much less money if we would have received less money than we would have received from a developer. If it meant that our property would remain undeveloped, and if we could retain the parcel of the property lying on top of my father's grave. We agreed to sell all our property as offered by Dennison Lakes, with the understanding that the transaction would close on the 14th of February 2005. The escrow was opened at Inyo Mono Title Company. The escrow officer was Judy Markham. I have all the documentation of that escrow, and that will be provided to the board if you want it before the next meeting. So again, the escrow is supposed to close on the 14th of February. My wife and I drove over here on the 12th of February. We stayed in June Lake. She had just had surgery, so she was not able to get around very well. I went down and danced with Darth Vader in Mammoth Lakes, hoping that we were going to close this thing on Monday the 14th. Late Sunday night, the 13th of February, after having driven all the way to June Lake from Santa Cruz, I got a message on my cell phone from Peter Dennison that said that Mammoth Mountain was not prepared to close the transaction the next day as they had agreed because Mammoth had not gotten, quote, an unconditional letter of support from the Forest Service. How interesting. We feel that we can show that Mammoth Mountain actually never really intended to close the purchase that the terms of Mr. Dennison made to us on January 7th. The fact that the exchange consultant for Mammoth Mountain, Adam Poe, who had been involved with Dempsey, the hospital, town, county, and fire department when they wanted to purchase the property, and who had been working with Mammoth, he knew nothing about the offer that was made to us the 7th of January. Again, we're in the middle of February. So I called Adam, I said, do you know anything about this? He said, about what? I said, about this offer that's made to us on the 7th of January. He said, I know absolutely nothing about it. And, the fact that Rusty Gregory is quoted in the Los Angeles Times on March 17, 2005 as having acquired the entire property for $3 million validates our theory that Mammoth Mountain never intended to pay us the $5,815,000 that they offered us on January 7th. Mammoth Mountain Ski Area was sold to Starwood Capital for $365 million. The jewel of Mammoth Mountain Ski Area is the fact that they can rebuild the main lodge in the Mammoth Mountain Inn. One must wonder if Rusty Gregory, the CEO of Mammoth Mountain Ski Area, explained to Barry Sternlicht of Starwood Capital, who's a very honorable man, that he had acquired title to our property by using extortion and conspiring with Jeff Bailey of the Forest Service, and that these facts could jeopardize the entire Forest Service exchange process. One must also wonder what would happen to the Forest Service exchange program if the people of Mono County demand that an investigation apply a process that could have had such profound effects for the community went so terribly wrong. The community should demand that the Forest Service exchanges be investigated in light of the extortion and conspiracy of this transaction. They should also demand transparency of the appraisal of the Forest Service property lying under the main lodge and Mammoth Mountain Inn to assure that Mr. Gregory and Mammoth Mountain Ski Area had not influenced the Forest Service appraisers to downgrade the value of those properties in favor of Mammoth Mountain. On February 6, 2006, we exercised an option to repurchase the property. Later, we were told by Adam Poe, the Western Land Group, the consultant, that Mammoth needed more time. He encouraged my wife and me to rescind our option and give Mammoth more time. On May 3, 2006, we rescinded our option. On May 4th, Adam Poe, acting on behalf of Mammoth Mountain, phoned me and thanked me for working with Mammoth Mountain to help give them the time they needed in order to get the community and the Forest Service on board. May 9, 2006, Rusty Gregory sent me a certified letter stating, quote, Mammoth Mountain does not accept the decision. This is the same decision he asked me to make. And not timely close this pending escrow pursuant to the agreement. The exercise of the escrow instructions, you will be deemed to have exercised and extinguished directly the extinguishment of previous rights. In effect, Mr. Gregory was telling us that he was not going to pay us the $2,815,000 due of this. May 18th, 2006, my attorney in Santa Cruz responded to Mr. Gregory saying, quote, clearly the terms of the Addendum A option purchase agreement will remain in effect until and including December 4th, 2006. I had to hire the law firm of Miller, Starr, and Regalia out of Palo Alto and Walnut Creek. Anybody who is an attorney in the state of California knows that they are the people who wrote California real estate law, and they are not cheap at all. They finally contacted me and told them that finally Rusty acknowledged that my wife and I did have the option to repurchase our property. What Rusty Gregory and the Forest Service and the Mono Lake Committee failed to tell people is that approximately 3/4 of a mile of the lakefront of Mono Lake is still owned by my wife and me and was not exchanged to Mammoth Mountain Ski Area. And the package delivered to the this board by Mammoth Mountain Ski Area for this meeting is a statement by Mr. Gregory to the subcommittee on national parks, forests, and public lands. This is a sworn statement that he wrote in writing. As Alice pointed out to this very same statement, he says, quote, included within these non-federal lands are the historic Mono Lake Cunningham parcel, which Mammoth Mountain Ski Area purchased, quote, at the request of Inyo National Forest, and the late Olympic great and noted environmentalist Andrea Lawrence. Mammoth Mountain's purchase staved off the threat of pending development in the heart of the Mono Nation National Forest scenic area. My family and I respectfully request the Mono County Board of Supervisors to question the truthfulness of 3 statements made by Mr. Gregory. Number 1, why would the Inyo Forest ask Mammoth Mountain to get involved in the very same transaction that Supervisor Cornetti was in Washington promoting the hospital exchange? Number two, why would Andrea Lawrence, the noted environmentalist, think that the Cunningham property was threatened when the hospital exchange was no secret to anybody in Mammoth Lakes? Three, Supervisor Barnetti's letter to Feinstein is clear. The Cunningham property was not threatened by development at the time Mammoth Mountain became involved in the Mono Lake property. As Senator Feinstein's office honored the request of Mono County Supervisor Tom Barnetti when he traveled to Washington, D.C. in January 2004 to help facilitate the hospital exchange, and that Senator Feinstein's office not intervened on behalf of Rusty Gregory and Mammoth Mountain, things would have been dramatically different for Mammoth Lakes Community Hospital, the town of Mammoth Lakes, Mono County, and the Mammoth Lakes Fire Department. Because Senator Feinstein's office intervened on behalf of Rusty Gregory for him to become involved in the Mono Lake Exchange, the most environmentally significant portion of what the United States Forest Service in 1999 stated they consider to be, quote, the most environmentally significant property in the western United States, the Mono Lake shoreline, remains to this day in private ownership but was not conveyed to the Forest Service.
Do you have any comments or questions from the board today?
I have a quick question. I'm not sure. So, did you actually sell a portion of your property?
You will get before the April meeting. It's kind of a blessing in disguise if this one's carried over. I put together a bunch of information about a week ago at the request of Alice and the community in June Lake. So when I heard that the meeting was canceled, you know, I thought this is good. This buys me more time because I didn't have much time to put things together. I've got about 12 file boxes that are filled with this. They're all labeled sequentially, and I will provide you with. Originally, what happened was we said that they were going to pay us $3 million. So we said, okay, pay us $3 million, and then we'll carry a first deed of trust on the property of $2,815,000. Rusty said that they needed 24 months to get the community and the Forest Service on board. So we said, okay, fine, pay us this $3 million. We will carry a first deed of trust of $2,815,000. Everybody said that was great. We had a property in Santa Cruz that we had to acquire, and they knew that. We really wanted to acquire this property. The night before that escrow was to close, I got a phone call from Peter Denniston, Rusty's right hand, saying that Rusty and his attorney, David Baumol, had come up with a plan, and you'll get the documentation of this. He said that him paying me $3 million and carrying a first deed of trust for 24 months was too complicated for Rusty Gregory. Instead, Rusty wanted to pay me $3 million, get title of my property. And the way we would get the $2,815,000 back was we would have a 24-month option to buy the property back. In order for us to exercise that option, we had to put $3 million cash into escrow, which meant that we could not use our property as collateral. Okay? So during that 24-month escrow period, after about 12 months, I called Rusty Gregory, how are things going, and got him posed on the phone. Things are going well, the community's come together, they're starting to understand the transaction.